Alrighty, welcome to episode 177 of Tokwa's Ask Us Anything. As usual, it's been a pretty busy news week. The Cogenut 4-stall version 3 supercharger site is now officially open and available for all CCS compatible EVs to use. Tesla has announced that it has now surpassed the 100,000 total historical sales barrier in Australia. Shortly thereafter, Tesla has announced that it has sold a total of 6 million cars worldwide. In what amounts to a purely semantic shift, Tesla has renamed its FSD beta functionality to FSD Supervised. The NRMA off-grid dual 75 kilowatt Tritium fast DC charger at Nullarbor Roadhouse is fully commissioned and available for all EVs to use. Tesla posted disappointing Q1 production and delivery results with 433,371 cars produced and 386,810 cars delivered. And that was this week's news. Indeed it was. And yes, welcome everyone to this episode of Ask Us Anything. As I try really hard to remove my spotlight, there we go. Alrighty, now as is customary, and usually just to elicit a pregnant pause after the last person said hello, if anyone is new and you are comfortable in doing so, please do unmute yourself and say hello.
We've got James with his hand up. Harold.
I'm James.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm sitting down in Michael River at the moment, and I'm considering buying a Tesla Y. I do have a couple of questions, which I wouldn't, when the time's right. This is the first time I've sat in one of these. I wouldn't mind asking very basic questions. So anyway, that's me. The purchase would probably be mid-year. We've been looking at EVs for a long time, a year and a half probably, trying various cars. But I think Tesla's the right way to go.
So, welcome, James. And the question I have of you is, what is it going to take for us to get you into a Tesla tonight? But have no fear. Yeah, we will definitely address all of your questions about the Model Y. And dare I say, you're going to be very comfortable in placing an order sometime really soon, because you've definitely come to the right place for that advice. And you are interested in the world's singularly best EV manufacturer, bar none. So welcome. And yes, we'll get to your questions quite shortly. Let's try for another person. If anyone else is new, please unmute and say hello. Or perhaps a little bit later on. Now, obviously, we've had some fairly unideal Tesla delivery news, and that's obviously going to affect Tesla's share price. Normally we discuss things like that a little bit later in the program, but I think it's a great opportunity to do it now, since we might as well ventilate it. And with that, a little bit of good news is I've got a new advice disclaimer. I feel compelled to thank Pete for suggesting it, as much as he wanted me not to thank him for doing so. So let's just run it, and let's all keep an eye on Pete's face to see what his reaction is to his contribution to this segment.
All views expressed are solely personal opinions, which you should not treat as personal advice, general advice, legal advice, tax advice, insurance advice, financial or investment advice, or advice of any other type.
You should not treat any contents as a solicitation, inducement, or recommendation to undertake any investment, to buy or sell any security, investment product or service, to follow any investment or trading strategy, or to enter, not enter, break or avoid any contract or insurance policy. Any comments are solely the expression of personal opinions and should be treated as such. All contents are for entertainment, educational and informational purposes only. All information provided and all comments made are general in nature and should not be acted upon without seeking professional guidance tailored to your individual circumstances. Past performance
So there you go.
Oh
suggested
my
one-
God.
Pete suggested one actually goes for 1 minute and 42 seconds. So I felt compelled to speed it up a little bit. But I think we got the main part.
Harold,
And once
could you do a the text going on the screen at the same time?
Oh dear, yeah, that would take a little bit more effort there, Steve. Just a little bit more effort. But anyway, and I'm going to enjoy trotting that out every week as we do non-investment or any advice. But yeah, so I guess I could do a hands up who's happy with Tesla's delivery results, but clearly I don't think any of us are really. And surprisingly, Tesla actually beat all of the worst bear cases to have the most underperforming delivery result sequentially, basically. So I don't know, Pete, you're a bit of an investment guru, notwithstanding the disclaimer we just had. How do you see it?
Yeah, look, I don't think I can share any valuable insight into that. I'm just surprised that the stock only fell 5% last night. I would have expected more of a reaction to that. I don't think the street was anywhere near. As you said, it's beaten even the lowest of the bear estimates, apart from some of the crazy outliers. But yeah, the street was nowhere near there. What's his name? Gary Black did foreshadow this about a month ago. He said that he's expecting the deliveries to come in much lower than the street expects, and the street will continually adjust over the next month. Yeah, he said that a good month out. So yes, the stock has been adjusting down. So maybe some of that was pre-factored in, but even so, I would have expected a bigger reaction than just 5%. So the stock's actually held up fairly reasonably well, considering the news.
Yeah, and I've sort of been racking my brains to try and work out what happened to the deliveries because they are so much lower than they're roughly, I think it was 40,000 cars shorter than the production. And the only thing I could think of that was semi-plausible was it might have something to do with, you had the Red Sea interruption with some of the logistics which reduced production at Giga Berlin, and then you had the urban terrorist activity of cutting power to the plant for a couple of weeks. And I wondered whether, because that was sort of in the middle of the quarter, it interrupted production then. Now, ordinarily, that production would have been actually delivered last quarter because it had enough time to get to all of the people that ordered those cars. But because production was interrupted by a couple of weeks, it's shifted the logistics so that, yes, they started full production again pretty quickly, but those later produced cars had no chance of being delivered, whereas the ones that weren't produced earlier, well, they couldn't be delivered. So there's a little bit of explanation there, but also it is probably, I think Pete and I sort of discussed this a bit earlier, as we're starting to get past as we start getting interest rates being reduced, classically what reserve banks do is they often reduce interest rates after you've had a bit of whether it's an actual economic downturn or at least a slowdown, they usually are a bit late to the party. So definitely there is a slowdown in vehicle purchasing, and that's not just the seasonal thing for winter in the Northern Hemisphere. You look at BYD, they were smashed. Their Q1 results were smashed by 40%, their deliveries. So they really were affected. And bearing in mind, BYD isn't just a Chinese, their turnover isn't just Chinese. For example, they have turnover in Australia as well. So yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting time. But notwithstanding that, a little bit of positivity is that more than a year ago, Elon Musk did foreshadow in the next year or so there being a ChatGPT moment for Tesla, obviously to do with FSD. And, we've seen now that Tesla has, probably correctly, rather than calling it FSD beta, they're calling it FSD supervised, which is probably a good idea, because that's what it really is at the moment. And, you know, you only need one great announcement that Tesla announces that, as far as they're concerned, they're happy for it to be used openly, and particularly if they say that it's at their risk, then there'll be a rather large revaluation when all of the analysts correctly then actually put a number on what this might be worth, rather than it being some ethereal, theoretical vaporware that they don't dare price in yet. So
What's
fingers.
listening to some of the other EV makers end of quarter investor calls, whether it's Lucid, Rivian, you name it. One thing that was consistent across all of them, and I think I listened to just the summaries of about 5 or 6 of them, is each one of them referenced Tesla. They never referenced anyone else. So it just shows you that they're starting to get respect, among their peers. And, when you have your competitors respecting you and holding you up as the benchmark, and the Model Y was referenced more often than, well, it was the only car ever referenced, because it was the best-selling car in the world. But it's of any fuel type globally. Just shows how much Tesla is ahead. And like you said, that ChatGPT moment won't be just one. It could be several ChatGPT moments. It will be FSD. It might be Optimus. It might be, when battery storage overtakes revenues from cars. It might be, when FSD is licensed, and, whether it's Ford or, might be similar to NACS. So it might be Ford and then the next and the next and the next automaker that capitulates and ends up licensing Tesla's FSD. There's plenty more to look forward to. But, they did foreshadow this in the last quarterly. They said that, they are in between S-curves, in between two products. So, the faster they can bring the Gen 3 platform on, the better.
And the thing is, even though Tesla's future business will have increasingly less to do with cars being the dominant earnings portion of that business, as we speak today, Tesla is exclusively being judged as a car business. And like you sort of alluded to, Pete, while Tesla's had a pullback on deliveries with healthy margins, all of the other car manufacturers are being literally smashed, dramatically smashed. And Ford reduced their workforce for the F-150 Lightning by 2/3,
which is just massive. That is just absolutely huge.
And the thing with classic car manufacturers is they're not even good at building cars. Their main skill, which their economic lives depend on, is actually forecasting demand. Because when they do a car program, it costs billions of dollars, and they sell billions of dollars worth of cars, but their actual total gross profit over the entire program is paper thin. And if they mispredict the demand for that vehicle, their entire program goes up in flames, and they lose a whole lot of money.
Absolutely. And they're not really building the cars, they're really just assembling them. So, it's a whole lot of suppliers. It's really they're really supply chain logistics companies at this point, rather than, auto manufacturers.
Exactly. Now, given that, I hope that Shane is still with us. I might just put a little bit of light on Shane, even though he tried to put a bit of shade on me. But this photo was taken on Thursday evening.
Yeah, I was wondering why you didn't use that in the news, Harold. You should have used the first car to charge there.
Yes.
It'd only be the second time I've beat you to a fast charger.
This is right, but this is one that I actually rang you. I mean, I think you were going to go there anyway, just to have a
I
look,
was.
just in
I
case.
was.
But yes, when I left, I was there a few hours earlier, a couple of hours earlier, and I had to leave because I wanted to do pizza at Il Chow on that Thursday night. And I saw some council workers just dumping some of the gravel on top, sorry, the blue metal on top of the bitumen, tar, sorry. And I thought, oh, well, I'll still be doing it for a while. And as it probably turned out, they would have been on the phone to Tesla saying, yes, we've finished, and then Tesla turned it on. But congratulations to you, Shane, for getting the first photo. And actually, Tesla commissioned these photos, and what are some nice sunset shots, which we got them. And then, of course, just to prove how good the this site is for caravans, here is an
And it
example.
really is too. I noticed, well, I obviously used it with my caravan on the way back. And I noticed that on PlugShare, there's another photo of a different Tesla there with a different caravan altogether.
Yep. So this is really a tremendously good site. And I'll just pause it here. Now, for anyone wondering and obviously on the right-hand side, you can see the WAV network, and this one here is actually the Kempower charger, so it's directly in line with the stalls, which is a beautiful arrangement. The good thing is, obviously, on a Tesla, there's actually a sign. That sign here says no entry, and then there's also a sign that says entry only. But if you're in a non-Tesla EV and you've got the charge port on your right-hand side of the car, what you can do is swing around and come this side. In fact, once we get lane markings and stuff, we'll take some nice drone shots, and we'll make up a bit of a like a mud map, so that if you're in a car that has a charge port on the right-hand side, on the driver's side, you should actually come in the opposite direction and park here, because that way you'll just use this stall, and then a Tesla can use this one. And then if another car with a right-hand fuel door charge port door comes in this one, you can use that charger and leave these two free. So there's a lot of flexibility.
You've also got both sides of the Kempower as well.
Precisely. And the other thing that Tesla can do in the future, when they expand this site, because eventually there'll be so many Teslas and other EVs, bearing in mind this is open to all EVs, that they'll need more chargers here. What they can do is basically put perpendicular charging setups here, just the ones that you back into. And that'll be out of the way of this awesome caravan site. So that's the first bit of really good news as far as charging is concerned. The other awesome news, and a hat tip to James Maitland, who is in the room, is that the NRMA surprised us all and actually got the Nullarbor. It's funny because actually calling it a dual 75 kilowatt tritium fast DC charger, singular, is almost accurate. Well, it basically is accurate, because very sad to see that both of these 75 kilowatt tritium chargers each feature a single CCS connector and a CHAdeMO plug, which, look, if I just put the one CHAdeMO, okay, if you want to be that sort of magnanimous, but to have half of those two cabinets with a functionally useless and pointless connector is unconscionable. It just guarantees that only two CCS cars can charge at the same time. At least they'll both get 75 kilowatts. And what's heartening to see is that, if I can actually get the tweet post, is that... Go, Shane.
I just wanted to compare and contrast that with on Monday on the way back through Kojonup. I pulled into Kojonup. I plugged in. There were two other cars charging on the superchargers, and I was getting 177 kilowatts.
On your standard range?
In my standard range, with two other cars charging at the same time.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's from one cabinet. That's from the one DC cabinet.
Yep.
So this is the photo that James took, and this is different from the Eldunda site. All of the arrangement here is all the same. The difference is the way they store the DC power, which is now in 3 separate cabinets, and I think there's a control cabinet at the very end, and then you've got just a standard bare bones backup generator. And in fact, if I can get, I actually can zoom in, because thankfully James's photos were of good enough quality to be able to get up and close. You can actually read the writing. It actually says, when the sunlight isn't shining, this dependable backup of an efficient diesel generator will kick in, ensuring continuous power so you can go further. So that's their setup. And it actually is, anyone familiar with sea containers, they are standard latching points for sea containers. So this thing can actually be carried on the back of one of those side sort of load sea container trucks and erected. You can see here that these wings, this folds back this way and this one hinges downwards. So it sort of converts itself into like a sea container, sort of, with the solar panels. And you simply erect it, fold everything out, and then drive off to the next site. And the challenge to the NRMA is, we now know, because James has reported that he got full power, basically as close to 75 kilowatts as you can get, which saved him, actually I'll let him describe all of that, but do remind us, James, of how much time you saved. But basically it's full rate power, it works perfectly well. There's actually 30 kilowatts of panels on the roof. So in essence, in full sunlight, you're only going to be using half of your batteries to provide the buffer power, and the rest comes directly from the sun there and then. And of course, the challenge is, now you've proven this works in this format as opposed to Eldunda, please NRMA, rapidly build another 25 of these or 30 of these and deploy them everywhere in WA and the Northern Territory and parts of South Australia. And please do it straight away. And then we can do an unbroken DC lap or figure 8 of Australia.
And preferably not in the same locations as all of the existing charge stations.
It's already done, unfortunately.
That's already done, unfortunately. As it turns out, what would be good if the NRMA could put a charger at Eneabba, because that would be very handy with the impending status of the Indian Ocean drive. But that's going to be grid connected, and obviously that's going to take a long time or whatever. But these off-grid units are eminently, you just need a bit of hard stand and you literally plonk it down. And this base is, if it's the same as Eldunda, it'll be basically a concrete pad sitting inside a steel structure. So it's self-weighted, so that it doesn't need to be underpinned, probably even for cyclonic conditions. So it's super easy to install. And in fact, you can install it temporarily, if you want to call it that, and then just fold up all the panels again, chuck it back on a truck and move it somewhere else. But hey, James, tell us what your experience was of this charger.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We left Madura Pass and we knew there was another Tesla there. So we raced off to Nullarbor, got there, plugged into the old 20 kilowatt. It was going to take 2 hours and 45 minutes to get enough charge to get to Ceduna. But we just raced in there because we knew there was another Tesla coming an hour behind us. Plugged in, wanted off, thought, I'll get a few happy snaps of it. And it was active, ready to go. So immediately moved the car around. 2 hours, 45 minutes, went down to 35 minutes to get to the next station. We stayed for 40, just get a little bit of extra juice, because you never know, the wind was quite strong. And we arrived at Ceduna with, I think, 9%. And that's in a standard range.
What a difference one DC charger makes, eh?
And that's
What was that
previously was
distance?
sitting on 100.
not only, and this might help James with his decision a bit later too. What a difference between the supercharger and the DC chargers as well. We left Bremer Bay in the Tesla, the standard range Model 3, and Sarah left in the Atto, in the BYD. Unfortunately, BYD's got an issue with the Type 3 superchargers at the moment, so she unfortunately couldn't use them. When we pulled into the Kempower at Yarramunga, we both got this. Well, I slowed her rate down. We both slowed down to 57 kilowatts. So, yeah, it is what it is. But then we pulled into the supercharger, or I pulled into the supercharger in Kojonup and also in Williams, and I actually beat her home. She left before me. She left about maybe 10 minutes before me from Bremer Bay. I was towing the caravan, so I was going slower. I had an extra 20 Ks to go because I went via Kojonup instead of straight to Williams. And yeah, I beat her home.
Fully loaded.
Fully loaded because I was stopping for, yeah, maybe half the time. But by the time I pulled into Kojonup, filled up to, I don't know, high 90s. When it dropped below about 50 kilowatts, I just moved on. And I got to Williams, I filled to 100%. I arrived in Williams probably 15 minutes after them. They walked up to the supercharger to meet me. I plugged in. We walked over to the servo to get some food. We had our food, gave the dog some water, walked back to the car. My car was full. They still then walked back all the way to the WA EV network charger. And I think they still had another couple of minutes to wait before they could leave again. So yeah, superchargers are awesome. It's all I can say.
Yeah, they're the gold standard by far.
They really are.
What's the main thing with them is the reliability. So you know that you're coming up to a supercharger. Well, statistically, there's a 99.96% chance that you'll be able to charge. Any other network, you're talking, low 70s, high 70s maybe. That's a massive difference.
And you can actually see that on the way into town. So on the drive into Williams from Kojonup, I was looking at how many cars were on the road, and I was thinking, oh, Struth, I'm going to get there and there's going to be a queue. And I pulled in, and I could see on the live as I'm driving along, I could see that there was 3 chargers available, then 2, then 1, then 2, then 3, and I could see I was going to get there and it was going to be good.
Yeah, Shannon, we're coming into Sydney on Easter Monday. Didn't think about the implications there, but obviously we left Wagga Wagga with 100%, and it said to stop at Goulburn. 10 minutes out from Goulburn, it said longer than 15-minute wait, rerouted us to Exeter or wherever it was, and we got there and it said 2 stalls not working and there's 1 free, and we're sitting on the freeway, Hume Highway, and a Tesla went past and we thought, oh, we're in trouble here, but he hadn't read his app. He got it then before us, pulled into the non-working, because it said Bay 1, Bay 2 not working. Now, Bay 1, Bay 2 were free, and another bay, we pulled into there. And then he was upset because we got the charger was working, but it was like, should have read your instructions. But
read the instructions, mate. Read the instructions. Yeah.
James,
you've so many.
So just one quick thing, just for James's benefit. So I went to see my brother in Sydney and last Christmas gone, and we went from Sydney to Melbourne via Canberra. On the way back, we decided to go Melbourne straight back to Sydney. I just typed in Sydney. I had about 12 different superchargers to come up to choose from. We only needed 2. Both times, so after 4 hours of driving, both my brother and I charged to 100%. We didn't need to charge to 100%. Both times the charges were free. We were the only 2 Teslas or cars there. And both times, both cars were at 100% before our food even came out. So, whether it would have been we only needed to make those 2 stops across that 950-kilometre journey. So whether we would have been in a internal combustion engine car or a Tesla, would have made zero difference in terms of time.
And on our lap, we had the same thing. It actually kind of got a little bit tedious towards the end. It was like you go and order a coffee, and by the time your coffee's ready, the car's full, and one of us had to go and quickly move it because we were going to get charged idle fees.
Yep, exactly.
There you go. And James has put up a spreadsheet of all his charging stops. Now, is the kilowatt hours, is the 558 an estimate, or is that just of what you could add up there?
No, that's what I could add up. I didn't take
okay.
across the Nullarbor. I didn't get the thing, so that's not including that.
Yeah,
I got
cool.
$32 credit from ChargeFox at Port Augusta that cost me nothing. So I don't know why I got that, but I'm happy to take that one.
Interesting. So if
Once
you
again,
compare,
that was a problem as well, because like Pete says, we Port Augusta was the first stop at shops after the Nullarbor cross. So we were halfway around Coles when the car said, time to go and move it. We hadn't even finished our Coles run. Yeah.
But I had lots of free NRMAs.
That's
it's RAA, Port Augusta.
Yeah.
Now, for comparison, Perth to Sydney is about 3,900 k's, roughly. So that's 39 lots of 100 kilometres. If your car gets 8 litres per 100k and you're paying $2 a litre, that's costing you in excess of $600. And for James, it costs $537. Bearing in mind some of these are big lumpy prices, such as Kaiguna, $50 for nowhere near that amount of charge.
Our lap with the caravan was 17,000 kilometres, and it was $1,500.
Amazing.
Yep, exactly.
And again, there was some big lumpy costs in there, like Baladonia. 3 Ways was another one.
And these are the most expensive charging stations anywhere in Australia. And so for most people, they'll use these sort of chargers maybe once or twice a year. Most of the other time you'll be charging at home off solar, so it'll probably cost you nothing, or you'll be charging at complimentary charges at shopping centres, etc. So but even if you charge on the A1 tariff, James, which is the standard Synergy tariff that most people are on, mind you, once you get an EV, there are EV add-ons that allow you to get lower tariffs for the whole of your house. But even if you just stick to the A1 tariff, and even if you don't have solar, it's about a quarter of the cost of petrol. And yeah, if you take solar into account, if you take some of the complimentary charging into account, you're probably closer to about 10% of what you'd be spending. But even the most expensive chargers, halfway across Australia, the most expensive DC chargers are only roughly about half the cost of petrol.
Also, unleaded petrol today was $2.29 for unleaded, let alone if you need 98, which you would if for a performance car.
Mind you, all those numbers I was basing on about $1.80 a litre. So at $2.29, those percentages go down even more.
For James, another you're getting bombarded here, mate. Sorry. I just stuck a link in the chat. I don't know how familiar you are with Zoom. There's a little chat thing on the side. There's a link in there to a YouTube video. Well, there's a link in there to a YouTube video for later, which is all about the charging we did around Australia. But there's some interesting content in there for charging at home as well. A lot of people think they need to buy an expensive charger. That's just not true.
Now, pop quiz, and no one say the actual answer, just say the letter, the first letter of what this town is.
Yeah. No.
P.
What did you say, Steve?
P.
P. Anyone else? Do we
It's
have any more P's?
Definitely a P, Harold. Come on.
Definitely P.
Yes. That is lovely.
But
that's the
Penong.
chargers all the way to the caravan park. That's just
That's the Tesla and the Atto that I was talking about a minute ago.
It's the opposite. It's
The very one on the
opposite the
phone.
caravan park. Yep, at Penong.
Yeah, that's just the photo opportunity. Yep.
Exactly. Very good. And as testament, at Nullarbor they built it, and if we have a look, we've got James came and used it. A Model X came and used it. A Kona has used it, and then unfortunately some people aren't very good with pins, because also an Ionic 5, I think, came and used it, but used the wrong pin. Oh, and by the way, just in case, I think it was on the Ava forum, there was some argument because someone wrote, Michael Lai works fine at 20 kilowatts, got an error message at the start, just replugged it and it worked. That is not the NRMA charger. What he actually was referring to was the Delta charger, because the Delta is a 20 kilowatt charger and is prone to errors. And look, the great thing is, and no one is happier than we are as a club being a donor to that project, is to see the Nullarbor Delta slow DC charger very quickly become redundant. And that's just an awesome thing to happen. And one day we are going to be super happy when Tesla installs a Megapack backed version 4 supercharger and makes the NRMA charger semi-redundant, and no better a thing could happen.
It might not be that long. So Shane and you were referencing Kogenup, which was our 8th supercharger in WA, and it's only been less than 3 years since we had our second supercharger, Karanup, come up. So in 3 years, we've had 7 superchargers. We've got Kings Park on the way, as you announced on last week's Ask Us Anything. So, that's 8 superchargers in 3 years.
Southern Cross can't be far off, can it?
So again, Shane?
Southern Cross can't be far off, can it, please?
No, it is. It's 2025, next year.
Yeah, awesome.
Next year. Now, sorry, just before we do that, I think Pete M, you had your hand up, which you then put down, but please feel free to unmute and ask a question.
Yeah, I was just trying to give a thumbs up to what Pete P was saying about all the new charges going in. But now that you've got me, when you started, initially I had a question about my home portable charger, like the one that used to come with the cars. But I've since tried it again, and my very clever car told me what the problem was. I've just got a dodgy earth here at home that I need to look into. Yep. And the other thing that I wanted to let people know is that if, like me, you just jump in the car and start driving away, and one of your wheels is making a horrible scraping, grinding noise, like you think your brakes are locked on. Tesla, I've been there, done that, and Sunday afternoon, I rang the 1-800 number. I got a real person, and she knew exactly what I was talking about and emailed me a link to the page that showed me how to fix the problem myself. And it was just a little stone between the brake rotor and the brake rotor protection shield. And I thought, that's fantastic. What other car maker would have a 1-800 number that's manned or personed on a Sunday afternoon, and that would be able to send you the link to fix the problem yourself like that?
Yeah, absolutely Fantastic. Did she tell you just to go in reverse and press the brake and go forward and go left and right to basically shake the stone out?
No, she didn't tell me that because I'd already tried some of that myself from just thinking maybe the brakes were seized on. And with old cars in the past, yeah, you put the brakes on in reverse and that kind of shifts the shoes or the pads around a bit. No, she said it was just a matter of pushing the shield away a bit. And sure enough, yeah.
Yeah, right. So you
Yeah.
just mentally, basically made the gap a little bit bigger to let the stone fall out.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty common. It's funny because it's really disturbing when you first hear it because it sounds awful. And
Yeah.
I had that in a hire car just coming out of a car wash in some part of Germany or somewhere. And yeah, it was very disturbing because you think, oh no, what have I done to the car? But you're right. It's great that Tesla has got those resources and it's online as well, that you can go to that, see the video and sort it out, which is great.
Yes.
Alrighty, now, James, you expressed an interest in finding out what was going to be required to get you into a Model Y tonight, and I think there's a few things. If you look at the offering, the first pro tip, unless you have a compelling reason that you want blistering 0 to 100 performance in 3.7 seconds. The best value Tesla you can get is a standard range Model Y, and you'll see that it has a drive away price of $72,500. But at the moment, there is also a $3,500 rebate, which is still in play for the Model Y, and that it applies to any vehicle whose subtotal is less than $70,000. So you can see here that the subtotal including GST is $67,200, which means it complies. Now, if for example you weren't happy with the Poverty Pearl White free lovely paint job, what you can do is you can add any single option, accessory, including paint, and still be within the $70,000 threshold. So for example, you change to a solid black or a blue or even the most expensive red multi-coat. If we have a look, that just sneaks into $69,600. So you can have a nice fetching red car with the standard black interior and aero wheels. You could also stay with the standard white paint color and go the fancy wheels. And again, as long as you click and check that it's $69,600, that's within the $70,000 subtotal. Or you could go standard color and get a black and white interior, and the white seats do look fantastic. And again, that is within the threshold. So that's one little pro tip if you were considering a standard range Model Y. And incidentally, 2 years ago, if you'd asked me and a lot of people in this room, what sort of car should you get? Our universal answer when there were no fast DC charger locations anywhere, basically, was get the longest range car you can afford. Because when there are no charging locations, fast charging locations, it's all about the range, because that's what counts. Now, the range is immaterial, because by the end of August this year, you'll be able to drive from the eastern, from Eucla to Kununurra, going along the coastal route, and even the inland part from, say, Norseman through Kalgoorlie to Perth. And as you drive along that entire distance of probably 4,000 or 5,000 kilometres, you will have an unbroken string of pearls being fast DC chargers with no interval more than 200 kilometres. So then range becomes immaterial. And one great advantage that the standard range cars have is that you can set the battery charge level to 100% all day, every day, and just set it and forget it. and just
Yeah.
use your car so that every time you wake up in the morning after having charged overnight or at whatever other point in time you want to do that's most advantageous, you always leave home full and you can always use the full range. Whereas if you were to purchase the all-wheel drive, which is a long-range Model Y, or the performance Model Y, that has a different battery chemistry, and its preference is to generally be charged up to 80% on a daily basis. And then obviously if you want to go on a trip, you can absolutely charge it to 100% and use it. But
Yep.
for pure convenience, if you just stick with the best value for money Model Y, then it won't cost you much, and you'll also get that added bonus of every day you wake up, you've always got your full use of the battery.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I'm pretty well on top of that information. My question is, having listened to all this amazing driving you guys have been doing, is very, very simple. From our small house in Mosman Park down here is 275 kilometers. We want to get a Tesla rear-wheel drive, not the long range, because
Yep.
I don't think the long range represents value for money. We want to be able to drive with the aircon on, doing the highway speed, 110. You know what the drive's like.
So from where? So from Mosman Park to where? Sorry.
Mosman Park to Margaret River. 200,
yes. Yep.
200. That's 275 kilometers. I've measured it, checked it. It's probably a journey in the future we might be doing once a month, once every 6 weeks. And I just want to be sure that we can do it in one go with
Absolutely.
aircon on. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So there's, in fact, I did that a few weeks ago on the way to commissioning the Margaret River WAEV network site. So basically left from the centre of the city and drove non-stop, and my battery wasn't full because I actually have a long range car, but it was only at 80%, so which had less capacity basically than a full standard range car. And you can absolutely do the 200, you can do 300 kilometers on your head in a standard range car in the most adverse of conditions. It could be pouring down with rain, a sou'wester could be howling, whatever conditions you can imagine, no matter what, whether it's the coldest day, hottest day, headwind, side wind, anything, you can drive more than 300 kilometers standing on your head. The great thing, of course, is, as you know, there's a supercharger at Margaret River. So if you were to supercharge there, you could replenish those 275 kilometers in less than 30 minutes in one sitting.
And James, I rent my cars out. I've got 5 different Teslas that I rent out, and my last guest left with a rear-wheel drive Model Y at the airport going to Margaret River, and he left with about 80%, just over 80%, and he got there with 30% spare. So I'm not sure how fast he was driving or what manner they were driving in, but I suspect they were just, driving the way an ordinary person would drive. Yeah.
Sure,
so that was the first time they've driven an EV as well.
Okay.
So
yeah. I've got a neighbour with a Y, and I asked him as a favour, could we jump in and program a trip to Margaret River? And it was telling us to top up at Tweendale, which rather surprised me because all the videos I've watched and predictions, it ought to be able to do it, but it just unsettled me a little bit why it was telling me to top up. Actually, it was either Bunbury or it was Bunbury.
Was his state of charge though, James? What was the state of charge of the battery?
Yeah, he reckoned he was on 80%, but I don't think he was because he didn't know how to. He'd only just got the car, so I suspect there was a bit of operator error in there. He was either saying top up at Bunbury or top up at Busselton, and we've got an obviously we're ICE car at the moment, and the convenience of being able to just do it in one go is obviously what we want. But from what I've read about the Y, it ought to be able to do it. But I just
it absolutely will. The standard range Y in the worst of conditions will get in excess of 350 kilometers on its head.
Okay, that's the sort of info I want.
So, and as a classic example, the first two people in Western Australia to get a Model Y, and these two people got their Model Y in August 2022, at the end of August 2022, on a Friday. These are brand new standard range Poverty Pearl White Model Ys. And 2 days later, early Sunday morning, the two Model Ys took off in opposite directions and did contra-rotating laps of Australia. Now, when you think about that, that's been done many times, whatever, that's okay. But on that lap, there are some rather large gaps, and some of them are in excess of 400 kilometers with no charging in between. So that's a serious undertaking on a car that those two drivers had not yet driven because it hadn't yet arrived into WA.
Yeah.
So two cars did it simultaneously, and they did it between 17 and 14 days to do 13,500 kilometers. You know, so
and then one of those drivers decided to do it in 10 days in a Model Y.
yeah, well, that's right. But so the great news is the standard range Model Y, and I'll just bring up PlugShare and just show you that these locations here incorporate Tesla superchargers and ordinary CCS. Just slightly ignore some of these pins here on the nuller board. This isn't quite accurate. You know, these are slow DC chargers, but all the others are basically 50 kilowatts and more. But basically, you can go absolutely from Perth to Margaret River non-stop. You could then go from Margaret River to Albany non-stop. You know, there is now, bearing in mind, I don't have I probably will have it handy. Like I said, by August at the latest, you will be able to basically do an unbroken trip from West Australia's northern border and its southern border, or through to its southern border. And I'll just try and get
I'm aware of that. I've spoke to the team last year at the camping show. We're doing a presentation about rolling out the string of chargers. And
yes, that would have been Sandra, Jerry, and others from Synergy.
They were supposed to be doing a presentation to people, and my wife and I were the only two people there, and we ended up monopolizing them for 50 minutes. So we really got our money's worth out of them.
Yes, that's what they're there for.
It was very reassuring. They were supposed to only be talking for half an hour, and we ended up talking for ages. It was really interesting what they were doing.
James, just to mention, sorry, you go.
So this is the map, and it's actually, this one's out of date. I haven't got the latest one to show what's actually been built out, but literally, and look, there are people like Pete. Oh, sorry, and I'll get to you in a sec, Steve. There are people like Pete and I that have done it. Rob Dean's done it, and a few others. I think I'm not sure if anyone else is in the room, but the stark difference of undertaking a long road trip comprising thousands of kilometers using AC charging and fast DC charging is so profound that you almost can't quite believe it's true. It sort of almost feels untrue, because it takes what used to be a real drag to be a superior experience to petrol cars, because no petrol cars have Tesla's autopilot. And trust me, the killer app in every Tesla is autopilot, because on a long trip, it means you don't have to do the minutiae of lane keeping and all that sort of stuff, which we're all used to doing, but it does sort of tax your mind subconsciously.
Sure.
And you're so relaxed at the end of the trip where it doesn't actually feel like you've been on a road trip. Normally on a road trip, you feel a little bit fatigued and tired because you've been concentrating.
Yeah.
And, you know, so the notion that you can,
Your brain,
you go on.
I was just saying, your brain didn't have to concentrate on all those micro movements. New times every second or two to keep the car straight.
There's a huge difference driving between Margaret River and Perth on a busy long weekend and doing it during the middle of the week when there's hardly anyone around. You know, you're not having to, watch out for the young kid in a V8 Ute coming up on the inside doing 140. You know, it's chalk and cheese.
Once you undertake that journey in a Tesla, you literally won't care whether it's Easter Monday return trip to Perth or the middle of a miserable rainy whatever where there's no one on the road. It won't make any difference to you. It's just a super relaxing experience, and one that your only regret when you finally get your Tesla is that you didn't buy it sooner. Now, speaking of buying it, for example, I think you indicated you wanted to buy one sort of June or July. Just one pro tip. Actually, you'd have to ask the salespeople. I think there's a little bit of inventory that Tesla has, but I think it depends what color preference you have. So
we want to go white.
Okay, so I think if you went poverty pearl white,
when I looked on Sunday, they didn't have any white inventory.
Right. So in that case, and obviously you should seek advice from the salespeople. But it's highly likely that if you ordered a car today, in any case you wouldn't get it until about June anyway. So if you wanted to get one in June, have one in June, you're better off ordering it sooner than later.
Sure.
Or if you want to order it in June, you've got to be prepared to be getting it in July or August/September.
So I wanted to have this conversation first before getting in, because we've been up there and we've test driven a Y, and the girl Talia, I don't know if she's known to it. She's been really good. She keeps in touch.
She's great.
She's not pushy, really friendly. Told her where we're at.
None of them are, James, because none of them are on commissions.
She explained that. She explained that. And we got a few things going on. We've just built down here, so there's a few expenses. So we said, look, we're really keen, but we just got to get this sort of stuff sorted out down here, and then we'll talk to you. But I also wanted to have this conversation with you guys, because I don't want to mess her around and get her excited. There's a sale coming, and then because one of the tests I want to do when we go back is to program a trip to Margaret River and just see what the car computer is telling me in the showroom as well.
James, one more consideration. You're probably already aware about the Model 3 refresh or the 3 Fresh, the Highland. So that's coming to the Model Y.
Yeah.
When? No one knows. We don't have any.
Look, we really like the hatchback style. We've got a Subaru Forester at the moment, and we're always putting
sorry.
stuff in the back.
What I meant is that refresh will probably come to the Model Y. So that will be called the Juniper refresh. Yeah.
I saw something on YouTube the other day that they didn't reckon that refresh was coming to the Y until next year.
Yeah, possibly Q4 this year or early next year. Who knows?
I've been waiting a long time to do this. I want to get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, to be honest, you're not of the demographic where you've got little children. Yeah. That would be for little kids. That's a killer app. You've got the screen in the back where you can use your Bluetooth headphones and you can watch movies and play games. Yeah. That's great, but you're not going to have to bother with that. And functionally, the cars will be identical. Yes, they'll look a little bit more modern.
It may have a little bit more range, because
possibly a tiny little bit range, but as we sort of explained, range literally is immaterial. Yeah. And the thing too is, if worst came to worst, like for example, I often find that my bladder has less endurance than my car. So if for example you're on your way to Margaret River and you go, well, I want to just have a a quick break at Eton, well, what you do is you opportunistically charge. So you don't have to, but trust me, in the 10 minutes, and it will take you 10 minutes to get from, you get out of your car, plug in, car starts charging immediately, you walk the 250 meters to where the toilets are, and by the time you've sort of done that walk and have a look around and get a coffee or something.
Hey, Harold, I have been writing to Chevron, who own those 2 fuel stations halfway down, you know, when you get just before the Crooked Carrot.
Yep.
And I've written to them and said, guys, when I drive down here, I always stop to have a pee and top up, and sometimes a coffee. I'm going to buy an electric car soon. You're going to lose my business.
Exactly.
You're in the business, Mr. Chevron, in selling energy. At the moment, that's liquid energy. In the future, you're going to be selling the electrons. What the hell are you doing? You've got all that ground. Why aren't you talking to Tesla? Why aren't you talking to, you know, the other people putting in fast chargers, and get some fast chargers in there, because you're going to lose my business, and you're going to lose all my friends who've got EVs around here. They don't call in anymore. You're asleep at the wheel. Yeah. And I just got a dumb letter back about a month later saying, our business is to sell diesel and petrol. And I thought, you guys are asleep. I mean, really, come on.
Well,
that's okay. That was by far the worst coffee I've ever had in my entire life at that place. So I don't honestly think you're missing anything.
I don't buy coffee there, actually, but it's a turn of phrase, because the coffee tea's always sweet. But it's definitely top up and go and have a pee.
Yeah.
But don't forget, Chevron are acting like the classic farriers and saddlers of the turn of the last century, where they went, oh, we don't care about these exotic horseless carriages. We're in the business of selling saddles and whips and horseshoes, and you know, these exotic things will never make it out here.
I'm fed up watching YouTubes from Norway, and they pull into a Shell garage, and you can see all the petrol pumps over there, and there's an acreage of Tesla fast chargers, and you think, well, they're doing it in Europe. What the?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and they're putting the fast chargers under the canopy now, and the petrol pumps out in the rain, which tells you something. Hey, by the way, I was sort of half listening to the conversation before. There are in fact 7 inventory Ys in WA at the moment, if anyone wanted one now, but
I want a white one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I want a white one, because we may put a film wrap on it. I don't know what you guys think of wrapping Teslas.
Could I just jump in, going back to a previous
Steve, you got
point?
your hand up. Yes.
It's been up for a little while. We talked about autopilot. We talked about ordering. Combine the two. Don't order enhanced autopilot or FSD at the time of placing your order of the Model Y. And Harold, you might like to talk about that one, and then I'll get to my second point.
Okay, so just a quick one, just in case you weren't aware, James. If you were to order enhanced autopilot, which costs approximately $5,000, or full self-driving supervised, which costs approximately $10,000, if you did that at the time of purchase, you would then lose any potential of getting the $3,500 WA rebate, and you would also get sales tax added to the price, because it would be deemed to be part of the new price.
Sure.
For something which is literally a software switch that gets turned on over the air. So you can absolutely, if you wanted to have enhanced autopilot, say, you could literally do it moments after you receive delivery on your Tesla app. So great point there, Steve. And let's go to your second point.
Going back to charging and the WEV network map, they had hoped to have it completed by the 30th of March. We know that can't quite be done. Has Sandra indicated when she might be able to give us an update as to how they actually went against the original target?
So if you recall, so that we'll just go back to the map. So the latest information that we've gotten is that we believe that Synergy, which is in the dark blue section of the SWIS, the Southwest Interconnected System, the latest charger, which I think is either going to be Kalbarri or Northam
I think Northam is what they
will
were
be
saying.
done roughly in June or July, but the issue may be, for example, with Ravensthorpe, and that's one that we do need. And I did note, thank you, Pete, for agitating to the Honourable Roger Cook and Reese Whitby. Ravensthorpe could actually be even later. So it could be as late, it may miss the next school holidays, being the winter ones. So that's quite bad news. That's for the Synergy side. But let's say Synergy should be ready by, let's call it June / possibly July. And look, to be honest, Northam isn't really essential. It's a nice to have, but you don't need it to get to Merredin and vice versa. Now, as far as the rest,
Towing we might, Harold. Towing we
oh yeah,
might.
absolutely, yeah, granted, yep, absolutely. Now, as far as the rest of the network is concerned, the latest information is I believe that Horizon Power are effectively on track, with the exception of Wim Creek, to have all of the northern sites done by the end of this financial year. So let's call that the end of June. And then the Nullarbor sites are due to be done by August. So that's the latest status. So Synergy all done by June, July. The northern part of Horizon Power done by June. And just the Nullarbor sites done by, and by the way, Eucla is not the site, it's actually Mundrabilla. They will be completed in August.
Yep, and just to be clear, that map you're showing is quite old. There's a lot more green on the map now.
Sorry,
than
yes,
there is
yeah,
on
I
that
was
map.
just too slack.
No, that's okay. Just if anyone's glancing at the map, that there's a lot more green on the map than that.
I think that one's probably closer to it. That's. I think that may actually be the current status.
Margaret River is also live.
Sorry, Margaret River and Nyanyatara.
And Kojonup will be any second now.
In the next few weeks, yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
So that's the status, Steve, of the WAV network. Now, please feel free to, if you just Google if you go into, let me just show you how to do this. If you just go into Tokwa, so I'll just screenshot it. If you go to search, hopefully this is the correct search thing. And if you go,
it's not the correct search thing. That's the admin search.
Okay, sorry. Let me just go into a private browser, because it's actually, can I just log out? I can log out.
You can log out.
If I log out, and if I don't log back in, how do I do that? Okay, let's just go like that. Here we go. Okay. Well, where's this? Oh, there we go. Search. Okay. So if in this search one here, if you just go Ravensthorpe, so just search for Ravensthorpe, and you'll see an article written by Ken of what's with Ravensthorpe. You'll notice there's a handy dandy clock, which is, believe it or not, it is 177 days since this site was fully completed, except for Western Power's contribution of a transformer. So for 177 days, this site has not been usable for want of a transformer that Western Power ought to have installed nearly 6 months ago, and for which everyone understands that they had plenty of notice that this was a thing that was going to be done there, just like all of the other 49 locations, probably about 20 odd locations that are on the Swiss. So that's where I'm appealing for everyone to please feel free to go to our website, search for Ravensthorpe, so it's tokwa.org.au, search for Ravensthorpe, find this thing, take a screen capture of it, you can do it on your phone, and then tweet it to Roger Cook MLA and Reese Whitby his is at Reese Whitby, all one word, and please ask them to encourage, inverted commas, Western Power to pull their finger out and get Ravensthorpe done, because them not installing it, as Ken said, on the 9th of October, it was installed last year. And Esperance's busiest time is the summer holidays, because it's obviously a super cool southern resort town. And people in electric cars were denied an easy path to Esperance from Perth. And they've been denied that for the summer holidays. They've been denied it for these holidays. And it's plausible that they'll be denied it for the winter holidays as well, school holidays. Granted, you can go via Kalgoorlie or basically Coolgardie, but that adds an extra few hundred kilometres to your trip. And to be frank, why should we have to divert for the lack of Western Power's sense of importance? Bearing in mind that Reece Whitby now is uniquely the Environment Minister and the Energy Minister. And as the Energy Minister, he's responsible for looking after Western Power and Synergy. And, you know, that's something, please, if we can get together and lobby, because if it's not made to the politicians' attention, I'm quite confident Western Power will be happy just to have it just sit there doing nothing for more than 177 days. And it's frankly outrageous. On that happy note, has anyone else got any questions or comments? Or
I got an easy one. Does the Tesla precondition the battery every time you program a charging slot?
No. So it does on some spots. Not all of the non-supercharger sites are on the map yet. There are some. The good news is, in my experience, I have never gone to a WAEV network charger, which is the 150 kilowatt. That's the headline number, power number. It's not what you get. You get roughly about 100 and in your car, James, you'll get about 105 kilowatts, which is still blisteringly quick. You can still get 100 kilometers of added range in about 11 minutes. None of those chargers actually need preconditioning, even if your battery's relatively cool, because it's just not a sufficiently high enough power level. In a supercharger, yes, it's advantageous, but as I think it was Shane said in his standard range Model 3, he was getting 175 kilowatts. He would not have gotten that likely if he hadn't preconditioned, which is automatic. Although it's automatic, provided you actually navigate to that pin. So the actual supercharger pin, or as you went with your friend and saw that your friend's car said, well, I suggest a short charging stop at Eton, it's not your destination, but it's a charging stop, it then would have preconditioned a few dozen kilometres out of Eton, depending on environmental conditions, etc. But the good news is you really, except for superchargers, you really don't need to precondition. And if you want to get really super technical, if you've got an extra 2 minutes of your life, I wouldn't even bother. I often don't allow my car to precondition. I'll actually navigate to the location, not to the pin. If I'm don't quite remember where it is or whatever, that way it won't precondition, and it'll probably add about 2 or 3 minutes to your charging session because your battery wasn't quite hot enough. But it heats up very quickly. Cool. Alrighty. Now I've just got a couple of. Oh yes, that's all right. All right. Has anyone else got any other questions or comments at them? Oh, actually, I see. Go Clark, and then I'm going to get to Tim because I'm going to dob Tim in. But yeah, go Clark.
Thank you, Harold. Two comments, or well, one question, one comment. First of all, further from last week when you're talking about the roadshow down at Kojonup, I picked up a Model 3 long range 2023 model last week. What is the actual towing capacity of it? I think I found somewhere it told me it was 750.
It's 1,000
which seems a bit
kilos.
light on.
Did you say Model 3?
Model 3, long range.
1,000 kilos. It's 1,000 kilos with brakes, 750 kilos without brakes.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that in the fine print. I wasn't sure. Okay.
In Australia, all trailers that are in excess of 750 kilos are required to have effective brakes.
Okay, thanks. The second thing is I just mentioned, well, my proxy, my son Matthew picked it up last Wednesday, 27th, just before Easter. And on Thursday, you all know, you mentioned earlier yourself, that Tesla said about that they've hit 100,000 sales in Australia. Well, I'm going to claim that one on Wednesday, my car was 100,000. So that's my claim to fame.
Very good. And I would never sully that by saying something like bullshit.
Was that Peter? Well,
Very
no
good.
one else has claimed it that I've seen, so I'm going to claim it.
Yeah, actually, that brings a very interesting point, which I'll come to quickly, is I think it was not even a day later, it was only some hours later that Tesla in Europe announced that the UK had actually passed 200,000 cars. And I was actually surprised at how little that was, because I did Google the population of the UK, and that is approximately 66 million people. So that's more than twice our population. So believe it or not, even though we, up until very recently, have been an electric car backwater, and certainly a charging infrastructure third world backwater, we're actually punching above our weight with respect to the UK, which is great.
Oh, awesome. Oh, that sort of stuff's really interesting. I find that really interesting.
And Cybertruck reservations, Harold, Cybertruck reservations.
There's a lot of negativity to EVs in the UK at the moment due to overcrowding at chargers and chargers being out of action for a long time. I got a friend with an EV, and he said there's been some terrible press over there about it, putting people off.
No doubt. And that's something I'm going to look forward to doing in 48 hours is getting a Model Y at Heathrow and driving it around the UK for 4 weeks.
Good luck.
And I just wish my wife would tolerate me driving from London to Glasgow in an afternoon. But anyway, I'll have to do it the other way, which is a bit slower. But you're right, and I bet a lot of that, none of that publicity would have been directed towards superchargers, because as Pete alluded to, superchargers singularly have the world's best on uptime, availability metrics of all of the other charging stations.
Yeah, this friend's not driving a Tesla, so he's in the wilderness, so to speak.
And look, to be fair, in the UK, off-street parking is almost unheard of. So a lot of it's on street, and there's a lot of challenges when it comes to that, you know.
A lot.
Okay, now Tim, tell us how your drive went.
It was great. It was really good. For those of you who don't know, I went, did a tour, did a theatre tour, taking a theatre show from Perth up to Broome, back down to Perth, then out to Merredin, and then Hopeton, and then back to Perth. And we managed to convince the theatre company.
That was just me doing something, sorry.
I'm losing my mind. And that was, we managed to convince the touring company to let us use our Model Y for all of it, apart from the Karratha to Broome leg. That was just something we could make work with the schedule they'd put together. And it was bloody great. I mean, thanks to all the excellent advice, help, borrowing cables and such from Harold and Tokwa. It was so good. And I mean, talking about, you know, what you were talking about, how much nicer the car is to drive than anything else. Certainly when we had to switch over to Toyota Kluger for the Kununurra, sorry, from the Karratha to Broome leg. Really noticed it, particularly coming back. Like it had cruise control, it had like lane assist, and it was a nice car. I mean, I've only ever driven old bombs, so it didn't take me long to get very used to how nice the Model Y is. But coming back to it in particular, the lumbar support, the amount of like what you're talking about of how relaxing it is to drive was really noticeable. And in terms of charging, we had a few glitches on the way up. Mainly that we arrived at Nanyatara the day before it was officially online, and so we plugged in. That was we had a backup plan to charge via 3-phase, but we plugged it in. It started working. We were over the moon. Went to grab some food. 5 minutes later, it just wouldn't work, and then so we ended up being a 3-hour charge there, and many calls here and there. Ended up getting the number of Dan from Horizon, who is just a lovely guy. I'm sure a few of you know him. So it's great to have that number from there. That was another thing, just how passionate everyone is about getting this EV network up and running. It's really, usually it's a bit of a faceless bureaucracy that you have to deal with when you have, when something's not working. But to have some human beings on the other end of the line who really cared about making these things work was, it felt like something that could have been a bit frustrating. Felt like, oh no, I'm happy to be pioneering this and troubleshooting this with you on the road. It was a very different feeling. So then on the way back down, stopping at Nanyatara, it was up and running and it worked beautifully. It was delightful. We had a little bit of a niggling issue. I think some other of you might have had some issues with the Overlander Roadhouse. That was probably the most frustrating one. It seemed to be...
You got to use port B, I think. Is that right?
Used port B and still would only charge in we ended up being on the phone to someone at what is it? Jet Charge? No.
Charge Fox?
No, not Charge Fox.
Yeah, it'd be Jet Charge.
Jet Charge. Yeah, so Dan and Jet Charge were trying to troubleshoot it when we were there. I don't know if this was the actual thing. It might have been a cabling issue, but at one point Dan was saying that when the machines are offline, like as in have no internet, they work great. When they're on the internet, they work great. When it's intermittent, it gets confused. And so that seemed to be what we were experiencing, where when it had an internet connection, we could charge and it would slowly ramp us up. And then when that went away, it just stopped our charge. And so we were only being able to charge for like 5, maximum 17 minutes at a time. So it was a very off and on experience at that one particular charger, but they were aware of it. We helped them troubleshoot it, and I don't know if anyone's had any experiences of in the last week and a half with the Overlander. But looking at PlugShare, I think a lot of people had a similar situation to us, but just didn't have the troubleshooting experience. But yeah, so hopefully they resolve that soon. And everything else was just amazing. There was only one time we ever had to wait, and that was on Good Friday, and it was at Lake Grace. And I saw your name on the that charger there. Yeah, we had to wait 40 minutes to plug into the one charger there. Besides that, the whole trip was really fantastic. It was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. And we're already planning our next one. Just up to Geraldton, which I noticed. I watched the stream of this last week, that the Indian Ocean Road between Geraldton and Jurien Bay is getting closed off, I think right at the time where we want to use it. So I'll have to do a little bit of research about the going around the other way and whether that's still viable.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So I think the official map sort of says you go north of Jurien Bay and turn right to go to the Brand Highway. But you can actually, I believe there's an access road directly east of Jurien Bay itself. So you can just go directly from Jurien Bay to the Brand Highway. And yeah, it adds about 40 kilometres to your journey, but of course it's only approximately 230 kilometres to Geraldton in any case.
Yeah.
So adding an extra 40 Ks, it's less than 300 Ks. You just charge a little bit more fully at Jurien Bay and you're fine. So you'll be fine.
That'll be fine. Yeah, and I was also going to ask some questions at an appropriate time tonight, just around how a trailer tends to affect the range. Just because if we have
Yes.
shows that won't all fit into our Model Y, hatchback situation, a solution is just I tow a little furniture trailer, or something that
Okay.
or something smaller than a furniture trailer. So anyway,
Okay.
yeah.
So with a trailers, large ones, or let's call them caravan. Let's say caravan, full-size caravan, slaughters your range. Slaughters it. So I'll just show you an example. I'll just bring up PlugShare and I'll show you Lancelin as actually, I might just do it on X instead. But okay, trailer is fine. The length of the trailer doesn't matter. The thing that is so critical, if it's enclosed or whatever it's got in it, is if you can get something whose height is no higher than the car. Because there's been studies done. It's an Australian study. I can't quote it right this minute, but they did computational fluid dynamic study on various caravans, and they concluded that it doesn't even matter what the frontal shape of the caravan is. The thing that makes the biggest difference on combined efficiency, whether it's electrons or fuel or whatever, is the extent to which the caravan protrudes above the line of the car. Because that's representing effectively new frontal area that has to be conquered. So if you're going to get a trailer, try and get, like if you have to enclose stuff, get one that's lower down, or get like a box trailer and you just put a tarpaulin over the stuff if you want to keep it sealed or whatever. But if you got like a moving one that looks like a horse float, that will significantly affect your range. And I'll give you an example of that. I actually hired a standard full height caravan, and I'm just gonna get it in 2 seconds. Here we go. So this is this is called a Winton 10. So it's a full height. It's not very long, and I've now come to understand that actually short caravans aren't great for efficiency. If it was longer, it would actually be more efficient. But this is at the Jurien Bay charger, and you can see that my results were 352 watt hours per kilometre. Now, when I then got up to coming back the other way, was coming down from Lancelin from Jurien Bay, and you can see here in the windy, I was in a, let's call it a 15 knot headwind, a slightly slanted headwind between Jurien Bay and Lancelin. I then, with this caravan, got a shocking 514 watt hours per kilometre, which is shocking. Now, a few weeks later, I then bought a different caravan, and if I've got, I managed to get 258 watt hours per kilometre from Perth to Lancelin, which is dramatically better. And that's with like a camper trailer. So if you had something like that, pulling this stuff, you'd be a lot better off. But your range will approximately halve. Just as a figure of merit.
Yeah.
So
if it's in that kind of shape, it'll still, like, the best that I can hope to achieve is half my range.
Half, yes. So and that's that is 1.6 meters. That's called a penguin, Jayco penguin. That's 1.6 meters to the roof. And it's slightly favorably shaped. It's got like a slight curvature in the front. So if you could get a trailer that was like that, if it's just equipment, not to actually sleep in or anything, or if it was a caravan, you just get something like this. Whereas if you get something full height, so if you got something like one of those Move It, I forget what they call it, U-Haul or whatever, you know, like a big box trailer with sides like that, it's going to slaughter your range, and you're not going to have a good time getting to Geraldton, I'm afraid. Now you can improve your efficiency by going slower. Like you could do 80 k's an hour, but then it just becomes a bit of a miserable journey. So,
and part of this, I'm sure, some of you here as well. It's whilst trying to be a exemplar of you know, to my industry, I don't want it to have too many concessions that would have people say, oh, well, then we can't do that if we're driving it. Yeah. So trying to, like, there's a difference between me doing something on my own and then also doing something that I can represent to other people in my industry, being like, this is why you all should do this. So, yeah.
Yeah, like so to be honest, the way I sort of approach it is Teslas and most EVs are the Greyhounds. They're sleek by design, super efficient. But when a Greyhound pulls a block of flats, that's when it gets exposed, as there is a limitation to how many batteries you can jam in, or they practically choose to jam into an EV. So for that, you need a trailer that is more Greyhound featured. And they will come, because up until now, there's been no incentive really to have efficient caravans or trailers or anything. Because when you've got, you know, 80 litres of petrol/diesel that has, you know, dozens of megajoules of energy in it, no one really cared. But now they will. And yeah, you know, even though Model Y can tow, the other thing too is if you've got fast DC chargers every 50 kilometres, which is where they should be in the first world. So if you went down the eastern seaboard where there are chargers every 50 kilometres, then you can tow a block of flats and you don't care, because you just stop every second supercharger or third supercharger and stop briefly and top up. So, and look, if you were taking it down south, it's a different thing. It's just that at the moment, once you hit Jurien Bay, you've got, let's call it 250 kilometres to Geraldton. And yes, you can do it as long as, depending on whether it's a standard range or a long range, you can do it standard. Yeah, you're going to need sort of, I think it's less than 250 watt hours per kilometre, which I could get in my caravan, in my camper trailer caravan, but it's a bit touch and go on that one leg from Jurien Bay to Geraldton via the diversion. But if you wanted to get from here to Jurien Bay and include Lancelin, it's easy, but piece of cake.
Yeah.
So
yeah, cool.
I guess the approach is use your awesome car for wherever it's appropriate and convenient. And in those one or two edge cases, then you just use a nice car, because it's the same as, you know, we don't drive around in furniture trucks just because every 5 years we move house. You know, we're all driving around in cars, and we hire or whatever a furniture truck once in a blue moon. So, you know, that's the way it goes. Alrighty. Now, with a note, actually, I might just
Harold,
see. Yes,
just to
Steve.
jump in, maybe John Edwards' electric truck could be an interesting evolution there.
Well, actually, so yeah, John's not with us today, but I've got some news from him. He has successfully completed his conversion of a Isuzu Panther something truck it's got a Tesla Model S motor and a Model 3 battery pack, and that thing has completely been finished. It's even got a tray on the back, and I think it either already has been licensed or it's literally imminently about to be. And of course, he also has the Hyundai Mighty EV truck.
It was the EV, the Mighty EV I was thinking of, that was talked about a couple of months ago.
Right, yeah, so the Mighty, so it has, I actually took it up to Lancelin for a range test or efficiency test, and yeah, it's it can do 200 kilometers at a pinch. So around town, it's the perfect thing. It is if you work for Harvey Norman or any of the furniture places, appliance places, the small delivery things which require I don't know how many tons that thing can hold, a couple of tons or whatever it is, 3 tons. Perfect. Around town, perfect. Because everywhere you slow down, you get regen, you're on smooth roads, but unfortunately on the open road, it'll do roughly 200 kilometers max. But as an urban delivery, last mile delivery truck, it's perfect because no trucks do more than a couple of 100 Ks in a day. Because most of the time you're parked at either your depot or at the customer, loading and unloading.
So not Tim's answer. So he now needs a Tesla Semi. That'll have no problems.
Stop it, Steve. As soon as it's humanly possible, there will be a Tesla Semi ordered, and as soon as it arrives, it's not going to be at home for very long.
I'm sure of that. Same as the Cybertrucks won't be at home for long either.
No, they won't. Yes. Spoiler alert, there will be a number of them departing from Perth in various directions simultaneously. You can bet your sweet pippy on that. Now, speaking of said Cybertruck, something I want to show is just... Sorry, let me just mute it because that sound is rather annoying. But let's just indulge and have a quick look at this and drool for about 30 seconds. This is in real time. And now it's slowed down. And it's absolutely hiking it on very rough dirt track, basically. And that's a Twitter account by Dave Sparks, and he's infamous for doing huge mods. In fact, he's the one that put the Caterpillar tracks on a Cybertruck and took it into the snow. So yeah, please Tesla, just make a right-hand Cybertruck and just ship, I don't know, have a lottery and just ship a few dozen and, oh God. Anyway, it's torture, Steve. It's just torture.
No,
yeah,
note to self, stop teasing Harold. Stop teasing.
and by the way, Tim, that thing could tow. So that one, you'll have no problems. You can tow a block of flats with that and it'll work really well. But anyway. Alrighty. Have we got any other comments, questions or comments from anyone at all? Apart from where's the Mandurah supercharger, which it's not coming anytime soon. So, you know.
No, it's not.
No, unfortunately not. But
I've got one other little thing.
Yes, Tim.
Does anyone bloody love autopilot and everything except high beams? High beams give me the willies. I've only driven it once actually out in the where you actually need it. out in the regionally, and it just hates the reflectors. It just keeps on thinking they're cars, and so I just had to kind of hold it on, and I just wish there was a function to say, hey, autopilot, love it, but let me control the high beams.
You can now. So there was a software update a few weeks ago, which now allows you to turn it off. I think it defaults as being on initially, but you can then just turn it off.
Great, I'll look into it. Good.
So, and the quickest way to do that is just push your stalk forward to sort of engage your high beams, and on your lower right-hand side of your corner of your screen, near where your odometer and stuff is, it'll momentarily appear, and then you can just suppress it, and you can select whether you want to auto or manual.
Great.
So that's only come out the last few weeks. So do make sure you've got. By the way, so in your car under under software, I think it is, you have something like software updates section, and there's a button that has standard or advanced. Always select advanced.
Yeah.
And the claim there is that the car will seek to get an update sooner than otherwise. And obviously make sure your car is connected to Wi-Fi at home, or if you can't do that, just occasionally tether the car to your phone's Wi-Fi. You can do this even while you're driving, and then it'll check for an update and then download it. So
it'll also notify before Wi-Fi. It tells you you've got a software update available, and then it says go connect to Wi-Fi. So that's when you hotspot if you can't get Wi-Fi otherwise.
Very good. And bear in mind, I did see a tweet, or was it on YouTube? It was probably a tweet on YouTube, that someone was so excited to get their FSD beta version 12.3 update that they sort of
Harold, FSD
supervised. I think at the time it was beta, but you're dead right, Steve. We're going to go through this semantic. Oh man, yeah. Anyway, I was going to say bullshit that, but I didn't, thankfully. So he was so excited that he sort of quasi-accidentally told it to update. The problem was he was at the exit of a car wash. And of course, you can't drive the car once it started an update. So they had to wait.
What is it, 25 minutes?
Yes, had to wait 25 minutes. And there's a photo of a Tesla basically jamming up the exit of one of those semi-automatic car washes.
And 2 minutes to say, no, I've made a mistake, stop.
No, the problem is you'll remember that it does have a 2-minute countdown. But what we all do, because we're all impatient, is if you then incessantly tap on the 2-minute and 1:59 second and 1:58 second, if you tap on that time several times in rapid succession, it then goes from 2 minutes down to 2 seconds, and then it starts. And you can't actually cancel it.
He never does that again.
So, but of course, we do always have the option. It usually suggests, once it's got a download, it'll suggest that you deploy it at 3 a.m., which is always a good time, unless you have a significant other that's heavily pregnant or something like that and is expecting an event late at night. So that's always a good time to update it. Now, I did find another awesome video. It's a related thing for the Cybertruck, and let's just put this on for a little bit of entertainment.
That looked fun on the outside. How was it on the inside? Fun on the inside too, man.
That's the best bit. Come on. No, anyway. Oh, just do it then. Sorry. Anyway, enough of that Cybertruck porn. One day it'll be a reality. Alrighty, so we got any other questions or comments at the latter part of this awesome program? Post-Easter program, actually. Are we all in our like post chocolate, cocoa, and what's the other stuff called? Sugar, hyperglycemic sort of lull.
An insulin spike.
Insulin. Oh yes, the hangover with too much insulin. That's exactly right.
Mhm.
No? All right. Well, maybe we might.
No, mine's more red wine, but that's another story altogether.
Yes. Well, in one sleep, I'll be definitely into the Coronas. That's for sure. But all right. What I might do is, hey Pete, are you still with us? Metaphorically or literally, for our outro, just to see if you're lurking. And if not, I might have to do it for you. No? Okay. All right. Well, what I would normally do is ask Pete how he would round out an awesome show like this, and he would always customarily say, as usual, stay safe, stay sustainable, and stay ahead of the curve. To which I would then reply, and the best way to do that is buy a Tesla. And that's actually, with particular reference to you, James, definitely buy a Tesla, join TOCWA, and ask us anything about accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. Just a quick FYI, I will be abroad for the next 4 weeks in the UK and Ireland. So I will probably still be doing proper Ask Us Anythings. At worst, if things don't work out, it might just be an informal one that's not recorded, but you know, that's okay. There'll still be people on that can still help, even if I'm not. But I'll do my best to be available and still record it on YouTube and Twitter/X.
Get some pics of a plate, Harold. Send them to me.
Yes, I'll promise I will try, Damo. I definitely will. So on that note, have a wonderful week, and I do look forward to seeing you on, if it's not next week's episode, at least a subsequent episode of Ask Us Anything.
Thanks,
Good
Harold.
night, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a fabulous trip, Harold. Yeah,
Thank you.
enjoy.
Yeah,
Good night,
enjoy,
all.
Harold. Night, everyone.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you.
Good night.